time.
You got way too much grass for anything else.
It's a little smaller deck than my other one was a 54-inch deck. This one's only
five days, 6 days a week. I mean, you pass it flying colors. You just got to study for it. The biggest thing is the terminology.
Sure, it is May 11th, and I'm actually not going to be at that one, but I will have someone covering
words.
it. So if they decide they want to go, I can just put their name on the list, and they'll get checked in. Yep, it's at 3:30. We tell the kids to get there at 3:15 because I try to get them in the front row instead of because we share it with PTI, and it ends at 4:30, and it's at Aiken Public Safety in their courtroom.
See, I did take your seat. Now you're making me feel guilty. I feel guilty. I'm taking Dawn's seat. I need to move.
No, you sit there because otherwise you sit here, I have to share a mic with you.
Yeah, you can just have her call the office.
Do.
Just stay. Just stay.
Okay.
Then we'll be going between the two of us.
I don't
Sit, boo boo, sit.
I'm not saying a word. In the last meeting I did.
Yeah, that'd be perfect because that way, in case she wants to do the jail tour or something, we can get her on that one too.
No, it wasn't fun. I thought I'd be able to talk very little and just facilitate. And no one was talking.
Yeah, that'll be perfect. Well, I'm glad that you're going to be out of town this week too because I am going to miss that safety meeting this Thursday. I completely forgot about it.
I want to take a picture of Nina working. Take a picture of Nina working. Nina.
So do we have an hour and 45 minutes?
I wish I took that picture now. I was just joking around.
Yeah, something right happened. Something right happened.
Thursdays are just such hard days for me. You know, and same thing with y'all. It's just the worst day. 3:30, and by that point, I have nothing left to give.
I don't know. My wife loves these things. I was going to take it home to her, but then I was like, yeah, I'm not.
Stop it, give her
After
lots
her.
of vices.
Eat it.
Well, since you said so.
Or they just have extra peanut butter.
No, there's actual peanuts.
Oh, it's crunchy. No,
Yeah, it says crunchy. That's the lady.
I think so. It usually is, and like I said, I just can't make it this time. But hopefully she can.
Yeah.
Manage to get my glasses.
I understand. Once you start something, it's gonna hard to
Jimmy.
like I
Yeah.
keep myself for peanuts.
The regular.
They got the right mix of chocolate.
You don't need the crunch.
I am number one. Mhm.
I say no much to later.
That sounds good. Well, I'll talk to you soon then. Thanks, Amy. You too. Bye bye. Bam. Sorry.
Is it waiting? Did Andy Griffith sing that song?
You
My eyes done today. Those are sunglasses.
You want to borrow mine?
Probably.
They might.
Are they just reading glasses?
No, I have old lady blind glasses.
Gil Allensworth, Susan Corbett, Tom French, David Hall, Douglas Howard, Daniel Kaminsky, John McMichael, Earl Shepard, Nina Spinelli, and Mary Weber. Is there anyone on the phone attending the meeting by phone?
Susan Corbett.
Hey, Susan.
Hey.
Okay. I'd like to encourage everyone to participate in the meeting. I'd like to stress that the meeting is being recorded live, so anything you say can and will be held against you. But speak loudly and clearly. Also be warned that the mics pick up idle chatter. Let's keep on the agenda topics during the meeting. There will be a public comment period where comments can be heard. We're going to do things a little different. We're going to, after some of our, I won't call them presentations, but after some of our updates, we're going to have comments from the committee members first, and if anyone from the public wants to make comments after all the committee members have made their comments, then we'll open it to the public. But let's kind of keep it in that format. Maxcine Maxted is our point of contact, and Maxcine has an update for us.
Thank you, Larry. So as Jack Craig mentioned at the recent CAB meeting, all nuclear materials facilities are in sustained operations. H Canyon continues to process spent nuclear fuel. HB Line continues to process plutonium feed material for disposition. K Area continues to conduct destructive examinations of 3013 containers as part of the surveillance program for long-term storage of plutonium. L Area continues to support fuel receipts from foreign and domestic research reactors and transfers of spent nuclear fuel to H Canyon for processing. We had a potential inadequacy and a safety analysis declared at L Area in February. Was it March? February, March, right on the border. Due to the lid coming off of an inner fuel can. The inner can had been removed from a bundle and was on a tray when it was being rotated to identify its fuel identification number. The inner fuel can and lid are credited as safety significant equipment. When the lid came off, all work stopped. The facility entered a limiting condition of operation, which stopped all fuel movements in L Area. L Area has developed a path forward to address the inadequacy in the safety analysis, and the fuel has been isolated, allowing fuel movements to resume in L Area. 235F continues to work removal of materials at risk and address actions for completion of the implementation plan for the DNFSB recommendation 2012-1. And as requested at the recent CAB meeting by the vice chair of this committee, we're adding 2 status items to the talking points. One was status of potential processing of SNF beyond the current amended record of decision amounts. So a briefing was conducted for headquarters, which discussed the potential for the processing of additional aluminum-based fuel beyond the AROD amounts, which was 1,000 bundles and 200 hypercores. The information was well received, but no actions will be taken until the new administration has been briefed and staffed key positions in the EM. The other item was status of disposition of non-aluminum-based SNF. This was included in that briefing package for headquarters, along with the aluminum-based fuel. Again, actions will have to wait till the new administration and their key personnel to be in place. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee members? Don?
Which fuels are being processed right now? Just for curiosity.
We have a variety. Do you want the actual fuel name? I'd have to go back and get that to you.
Is there
Oh.
foreign ones or domestic?
It's both foreign and domestic.
Okay. They're all the same MTR?
MTR, material test reactor. They're all the bundle fuel. So all the fuel that right now is in bundles. By the end of the calendar year, beginning of next calendar year, we hope to be processing the hyper.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. So and obviously, we don't have a clue when the administration is going to get anybody in place.
No, we don't.
David?
David Hoyle, Cab. Maxine, have there been any domestic or foreign fuel research reactor receipts?
For this fiscal year, yes.
Can't say from where.
I can't say from where.
Darn.
Sorry.
That's already been received or that you're going to receive? You can say what's already been received.
No, I can't.
That's new. That's new.
I'm not allowed to comment on an ongoing campaign.
Oh, so they're still being received from that?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have had receipts already in this fiscal year, and we do have planned receipts for the rest of the fiscal year,
But there has
both from domestic and foreign.
We always receive domestic stuff. I mean, we're constantly getting that. So, I mean, you can't say that you're getting stuff from Missouri?
No.
I can, but what we're doing is trying to keep it all at the end of the year, so it makes more sense, and we're not double counting. So we're trying to wait till the end to give you an update.
Okay. It picks up idle chatter.
You're not idle.
Oh.
Okay, no more questions from the committee. Any other questions from public or anyone else? Okay, thank you, Maxine. Appreciate that. We're now in our committee discussion. What do we have to discuss? I don't think we have any open recommendations, do we?
You do. You have 3 of them.
Oh,
that's
my
right.
goodness. Yes, they are.
That's right. So, I don't know exactly what status means when it's open.
Open just means that you have received a response from the department on it.
And we haven't said whether we're accepted or not yet.
Right. You haven't commented. You may be waiting on some action from DOE before you want to close it. So now would be a good time for you to look at these recommendations.
You don't have
look
them,
at the responses.
the responses handy that you can put up, do you?
Let me see if we can get that. I don't know why it won't.
If you can't find them, I don't feel so bad that I can't find them.
Let me say this.
Oh, good.
So what is it, 334?
334 was the operations review on, this was the HB line incident recommendation that you had. And the first 5 parts, this is just what I have in my notes, were not accepted, but the last 3 were.
You have the,
Here.
do you know what day that was sent? Oh, okay.
I got your hand.
I'll cut my hand.
Yeah, I drop my phone a lot.
Oh, on here.
Is that larger or easier to read?
Maybe.
Again, I don't have the full response, but I do have 1 through 7 in there.
Okay, we're gonna do that.
Do you want to read out the parts that are accepted? So I think element 6 was accepted, and that's the department will request that SRNS assess the topics described in this element as part of the SRNS independent assessment. 7 was accepted, and that was DOE will work with the CAB to include in the work plan a presentation on the results of the SRNS effectiveness review when it is completed. The review is expected to be complete by December of 2017. And then element 8 that was accepted is DOE will work with the CAB to include in the work plan a presentation on the results of the independent review of SRNS's nuclear critical safety program. This review is expected to be complete by April of 2018.
I'm looking at the ones that weren't accepted.
Do you have those?
Yeah, the recommendations that were not Don Gillis Cab. The recommendations that were not accepted were 1, review any resulting paperwork or documentation by an additional supervisory level at the end of the work shift, but no later than within 24 hours, even if that 24-hour period includes a weekend or holiday. Do we have any kind of discussion on that, why that wasn't accepted? DOE?
Maxcine Maxted, DOE. If I recall correctly, it's because we already have that level of supervisory review, so we didn't think we needed to add anything else.
Well, that would have been a better response than just not accepted.
Understood.
Okay, second one is, don't go anywhere. Hire additional personnel or shift responsibilities, so that this type of supervision could be carried out. So that's the same answers to number 1. You're saying there's already that level of supervision. 3, allocate or apply for additional funding to enable number 2. Again, that's the same answer then, right?
Correct.
I'm texting her.
4, oh.
Are you texting her? Okay.
4,
Let's go.
review, analyze, and rewrite procedure performance 5.3 as needed. I don't remember what 5.3 was.
It was a site level document, and I don't recall the specifics on it, but it was a site level procedure. And it's had to do with like work planning, I believe, but I don't know the specifics to answer that.
Wasn't this yours?
It was Jenny's.
Yes,
Oh.
Jenny is
Isn't
the
it
one.
Jenny?
Jenny.
Was this Jenny? Wasn't this David's?
Wasn't, I think it was.
I can go back and look at that, but
Okay.
I know it was a site level procedure. I just don't recall what the actual steps said.
And number 5 was review procedures for team composition to change members to different teams periodically so that team member familiarity does not prevent or diminish optimum work quality. Optimum work quality. Crows. Keep getting interrupted. Okay, go ahead.
Jenny, if I can get you to hit a microphone for me, and if I could also ask for our phone attendees to perhaps mute their phones, if possible.
Yeah, the thought behind the team membership recommendation was that the reason they didn't report each other was that they were too familiar with each other. So the idea was that if we had a random composition on the team, that wouldn't happen. They would be more likely to call a work stoppage or whatever. But while I'm up here, since we got the independent the independent and the other one, I'm happy.
The independent other one? Oh, you mean number 1?
Yeah.
Okay, now they're saying that was already being done, that they didn't change anything, that it was already being done. Correct?
Correct.
Is there a copy of that I can have? I'm a visual person.
You read that one. Yep.
Number 6.
Okay, they oh, sorry.
Yeah, they approved number 6.
Yeah.
That we include the independent assessment. I think that covers
The rest of
a
this, okay.
multitude.
Okay.
So I'm happy with that, and I appreciate that they reviewed and gave responses to everything. We got number 7, correct?
Mhm.
There's going to be a presentation on the results, and a presentation of the results on the independent assessment, so.
Okay.
I'm
But
pleased.
understand those due dates. It will not be in this year's work plan. It'll be in next year's work plan.
Yeah, we already have too many things in this year's work plan. So we'll try to plan that for like January, maybe. Okay. Tony, did you have something to add?
Yeah, this is Tony Polk, Department of Energy. So just because Michael was able to pull this up, I was concerned with the fact that you'd indicated that we just said not accepted, but with each one of the non-accepted elements, we provided an explanation in the response for why they were not accepted.
Okay,
So,
I just hadn't seen that.
It's on your website.
yes, it's on the website, yes.
It doesn't
So-
appear on the printout.
I don't understand why. That's what had me, that's why I was.
I think this is
maybe had
just,
a
I think this is
concern
just a consolidation. This is just talking points, so.
It probably
okay.
is. So if you need to understand what those
I'll look
are,
up-
I've
I'll
got
go-
them here.
Well, I'll go look on the website.
Okay, very good.
I just haven't had a lot of time lately, so.
And James is trying to pull it up, but it's not coming in, because he has the website out there now.
So, Jenny, if you're happy with that, I guess we can close.
go ahead and
this-
close this
Go
one.
ahead and close this out.
I would suggest that we keep it on open status so that we keep following it. And
Or does that turn to, I forget the definitions of things, pending?
Closed means that.
That is, we don't, everything is done, yeah.
Open means that it'll continue to
Still
be
waiting.
on the same, to the members of the audience, this was my recommendation, and I'm taking the term off the cab, I'm taking the term off the cab right now. But this was a recommendation that I worked on with the committee very hard. So that's why I'm up here talking. So I would recommend keeping it open, but since I'm not an active committee member, it's up to y'all. Keeping it open, James, correct me, would mean that it would be on the monitor during meetings, that we could discuss it or not, we could pass on over it. It just, if it's, as opposed to, if it's closed, that means we don't see it anymore. My reasoning for wanting it to be open is to keep in our minds that they still have a presentation on number 7 and number 8 of the independent assessment, and the other one that's still coming. So that's my reason for wanting to keep it in the open status.
Or if we get it into the work plan for next year, that gets added to the work plan, then we can close this.
Sure.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll keep it open then
Keep it
until
open
until we
until
get it planned into
Get
the
it
work.
in the work plan. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Jenny. The next recommendation, I think, Don, was yours.
Got to remind me what the
Improve H Canyon throughput.
Throughput. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's the extra dissolvers and all that fun stuff. So what's going on with what was the response? One of these days, I don't know how I ever had time to go to work.
It's 3:37.
Okay.
The first and second recommendations were completed by a small SRS team who worked in sequestration to analyze the current plan, and they made 3 recommendations in reference to this, and then number 3 is accepted, or the third recommendation that you have.
Actually, I like that first paragraph. You say you're actually getting your team together of the right people to go look at this. That's good.
We did, yes.
Yeah, that's already happened.
Yes.
Okay, so initially the team thoroughly scrutinized the baseline for processing SNF bundles through H Canyon, examining each of the major unit operations and their interactions, utilizing sources such as SRS Nuclear Materials Planning Roadmap, the SNF schedule, experienced H Canyon personnel. The team examined inputs and outputs, primarily volumes and product constituents, as well as current constraints and requirements such as hold points. Okay, hold points are not the same as choke points.
No, they're
Yeah.
they're not.
They're not.
That was my kind of point, was looking at the choke points.
And we did, that team looked.
That was part of this was done, okay. For sampling of the major unit operations based on the comprehensive examination of the individual unit operations and the integrated system, the team developed a general timeline for nominal processing and sampling timelines. The SNF processing timeline developed by the team is a model of plant capability. Is this the same as that?
It's not the MITRE model,
Okay.
no.
The timeline was developed to confirm that processing bundle throughputs projected in the current plan could be achieved, and as a tool to compare improvements proposed by the team. Timeline was developed to confirm that processing bundle you're talking about current throughputs, that is going to happen.
Yes.
But my point was get the next step. Do I need to keep reading?
What do you mean get to the next
No,
step?
if we're doing 10 now, how can we get to 12?
And that's what that team did. So, for
Okay.
example, one of the things was the 70-ton cask right now can only hold 11 or 9 bundles. They're going, part of that team decided that they were going to increase the number of bundles in a dissolution batch in H Canyon to 25 versus the 20
Okay.
that's there now. So we needed to increase the number of bundles we could put into a 70-ton cask. They're going to get that up to 12. So those are the type of things that
Okay,
they're
cool.
doing right now
Okay.
to increase the throughput.
Good, okay, good. Oops. I went somewhere else. I was trying to flip up and it flipped elsewhere. So that sounds really positive. It sounds like there's some actual actions taken.
I'll be your advisor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm her technical advisor.
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
next
yeah.
5 minutes.
So now some of the things the team identified does require additional funding, and we're working on that additional funding. Some examples would be like online sampling. They looked at everything and how long it takes to get from one step to the other, from everything from receipts to sampling, getting the sample results back, to maintenance that has to be done. Everything was looked at and put out on basically a whiteboard with yellow stickies, moved around to be more efficient. So we are working down the path of those recommendations now.
Cool. Okay, Ken,
Is that something that we can help with the funding on? With a recommendation supporting your funding increase?
I think we have the recommendations from the CAB that help us with those funding requests right now.
By just
We
saying
use this
that-
one as an example.
yeah. Okay, so I think this is good. I think we can probably close this one out based on this. Can we say in what time frame for one of these kinds of updates to give us a real good thing that says we're now shipping 12 instead of 11, we're now processing 25 instead of 20. Can you just add those things to your, actually we're going to do it every other month, so if you can add those things to your update.
I can try, yes. Yes. I'll
Yeah,
take
just-
it back and
just
they'll
so-
tell me if I can or can't. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just generic. I mean, the things you've said in here, that these are the things that we said we're going to try to do, and yes, we accomplished this one, and yes, we accomplished that one, and yes, we accomplished this one.
So, Dawn, Tony Polk, Department of Energy. I think it would be appropriate, and during the updates, we can provide information and let you know what kind of improvements we've been able to make along the way that have improved the throughput in the canyon, and the other activities associated with it in L area or otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
to support
From
it.
here all the way to the waste tank. So
Right.
to get it from A to Z.
Because
So-
there are any number of initiatives, as was described by Maxine, and we have not given up on others like a third dissolver that would help us.
Okay. Now, can you also give some kind of a, I don't want to use analysis because that's too detailed, some kind of an idea of if it was going to take 8 years to do the 1,000 bundles and 200, and it's now going to take 6.5 years. Give us some idea of how that's going to draw on the schedule. Because that's the point. The point is to get it done faster.
It is, but I believe, Dawn, at least when we get to that point, the thing that is going to be the driver for that more so than the facility's capability is going to be the funding that we receive. And so it's hard to, since we cannot predict that, I would hate to bring here.
Yeah, you say, we're gonna get it done in 6
advance,
years, and
here's
then
where
don't
we
get any
should be
funding.
in 3 years, and funding, be in the way of achieving that. I
So-
think it's better for us if we can describe during the year the things that we are doing to be able to make our goals for the year based on what we already understand funding is, and what kind of improvements we're making to be able to get even more efficient
Yeah,
with the dollars we have.
and I do understand that funding thing. But right now you have a schedule. You've told us it's going to take however many years it is to do this. the
Right
current
now,
plan.
we're working to 2024.
To get the current stuff done.
Yes.
And it goes without saying, every year, the funding changes and funding can do this to it. So if we get extra funding and it brings in, because we can do a little bit more, and then the next year it brings it out because there's, but to have an idea of where that's going.
So again, I think that what we can do is be able to at least relay that we're either on target, or we've, because of other issues, we're behind, and we're projecting a different date, whether it be sooner or later.
And for whatever that cause is,
Okay.
whether it's funding or whether it's another PISA that shuts everything down for a year, please no. But okay, good. I'm happy with that.
Okay, so James, we'll go ahead and close 337.
Well, what you gotta do is you gotta propose to the full board to close it with the new SOP.
Okay.
The committee's gotta vote to propose to the full board that it be closed.
Okay.
So we'll have that discussion at the full committee then, and this discussion.
One more status thing, Maxcine Maxted, DOE. We've done 180 bundles of the 1,000 bundles. So 10%, yay.
Wow, yeah. That doesn't sound like 2024 to me.
Larry, can I make a motion to
Sure.
bring this to the
Let's do the
full
easy stuff.
board to close it?
Yes.
Recommend closing?
Second. Is that what we're supposed to do?
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Thank you, Nina.
So that was 337.
Mm-hmm.
Did
That
we-
was 337
Okay.
and 334.
We'll keep 334 open, okay.
And recommendation 341,
Yeah, I've got the DOE response right here. It's pretty short and sweet.
It says, okay.
It basically dishes it off to headquarters. It says the authority to accelerate plans and decisions to process the entire inventory of SNF rests with DOE's EM. As such, DOE EM is copied on this letter, and we will work with headquarters as we determine the future of SRS nuclear material mission. The department values the CAB's position on SRS programs and appreciates and desires the CAB's desire to have a disposition path for all spent nuclear fuel. So that's all we really probably could expect from SRS in that regard. The bottom line is the message was received in terms of our encouraging them to process this aluminum-clad spent fuel. I recommend, or I make a motion that we close this recommendation.
A second.
all in favor? All opposed?
Mary Weber Cab, I've got a question. Why don't we, since we tabled the first one, and we really didn't get a response to this one, why are we closing it?
We did get a response.
Yeah,
But we didn't really
all,
get
all three of these are very closely related.
Okay.
And the 337, by following that is like shortening, trying to get everything done faster. So that is kind of, if they're doing everything that 337 says, it's going to essentially make 341 be a positive 2. So for as long as we're following the details of 337 as they're like we just was talking about, and then I think that we can safely close this one.
Okay.
I'll keep them on their toes.
Okay, do we have anybody opposed to closing?
Maxine Maxted, Dewey. One more, I'm not opposing it, no. One more thing just for you to take into consideration. This recommendation was used with that briefing at headquarters that I talked about in the talking points this morning.
Oh, good. Cool.
Thank you.
Can I ask for something? Between closed and open, if a recommendation concerning bringing something to headquarters to discuss, so if a recommendation was a closed status, could you still bring it up to headquarters? Okay.
Yes, we
Bring
can.
anything to headquarters.
And we do.
Okay, any other discussions? That takes care of our recommendations. David, I think you wanted to talk about the position papers.
Yeah. With our newly approved standard operating procedure, the CAB no longer will have position papers. We'll just have recommendations and an annual letter on budgeting. And so when the position paper that we have 2 position papers on the books right now that will expire in July. They're due to expire after a year that they're passed. And so I was going, and once they expire, they disappear. They're not even kept in the record. So I was going to propose that we convert those 2 position papers to recommendations, and I brought drafts along for the committee members to examine. Probably too late for us to make any kind of motion or anything to the full board this time around. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we can still pass them around and consider them until next time. And so that's what I'd like to do. The first one, the title is I'll let it get around first so that you can follow
It's just
along.
one picture.
Yeah, front and back, yeah. The first one has to do with opposing receipt of German foreign research reactor spent nuclear fuel for treatment and storage in the U.S. Indulge me, I'll just walk us through it. In 2016, DOE issued a draft environmental assessment on the proposal to receive spent nuclear fuel containing U.S. origin highly enriched uranium from the Federal Republic of Germany for processing and disposition in environmental management facilities at the Savannah River site. While the CAB has been generally supportive of EM's involvement in the nuclear non-proliferation goals of the Foreign Research Reactor Spent Nuclear Fuel Return Program, the German spent nuclear fuel falls short in several key areas of which the CAB has concerns. One, DOE has not established an adequate and compelling purpose and need for the proposal. A formal memorandum by the National Nuclear Security Administration clearly states that the German spent nuclear fuel, quote, is not a proliferation concern, unquote. Therefore, bringing it to the U.S. for safeguarding is unnecessary. Processing the German spent nuclear fuel is unnecessary because the current physical state of the German fuel is stable and substantially proliferation resistant, and Germany is a wealthy and stable first world ally capable of safely and securely managing this spent nuclear fuel. Two, DOE has not identified nor evaluated all reasonable technological siting alternatives if the spent nuclear fuel is brought to the U.S. The methods to process the German fuel are not yet fully developed, and therefore the potential environmental impacts are vaguely estimated in the draft EA. Not processing the German spent fuel is a reasonable technological alternative because the current physical form of the spent fuel is stable and amenable to long-term storage and disposal as it is. Processing the German spent fuel at SRS would actually invite more environmental impacts and risk than not processing. Therefore, the alternative of bringing it to the U.S. but not processing must be assessed. If constructing a processing facility in L area is considered a reasonable alternative rather than processing in the H Canyon, then clearly there are other reasonable processing location alternatives than only at SRS. And then the discussion says, while evaluating the German spent fuel, it's appropriate for the CAB to consider the backdrop of other overriding environmental issues facing SRS, which are linked to management of this spent nuclear fuel. While the DOE Savannah River Operations Office and its contractors have done their best to keep commitments for cleanup and disposition of SRS materials and waste, this can also be said of the support received from DOE headquarters. DOE has A, failed in timely establishment of a geologic repository for disposal of EM high-level radioactive waste and spent nuclear fuel as required by the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. B, consistently failed to provide sufficient resources for timely disposition of the large existing inventory of SRS spent nuclear fuel. And C, since 2014 continued to underfund and thus delay its legal SRS EM cleanup commitments, especially regarding treatment of liquid radioactive waste and closure of tanks. Such DOE failures undermine the CAB's confidence in DOE's ability for timely disposition of the German spent fuel and associated waste outside of South Carolina. So the conclusions say, U.S. receipt of processing of German spent fuel is not needed for U.S. nuclear nonproliferation goals. Therefore, the purpose and need for the proposal is lacking. All reasonable technological and siting alternatives have not been evaluated. It represents an unwarranted additional environmental risk to the citizens in the central Savannah River area. The proposal will unnecessarily add an already large burden of indefinite spent nuclear fuel and high-level radioactive waste storage at SRS with no established path for disposal. DOE failures to faithfully keep pace with SRS cleanup commitments impede the acceptability of this deficient proposal by the citizens of the South Carolina and Georgia. Therefore, the recommendation is that the SRS Citizens Advisory Board recommend that DOE, 1, correct the deficiencies identified in the background section of this recommendation in the final environmental assessment, and 2, prefer and select the no action alternative described in the draft environmental assessment. In other words, not receive the German spent nuclear fuel for treatment and storage at SRS, or in the U.S. So I pass that out for the CAB's committee's consideration, and I guess we'll take a vote on it at our next committee meeting.
First, I have a good question. This is U.S. origin HEU, right?
Maxcine Maxted DOE, yes it is. And for clarification, I believe you're talking about the graphite fuel, so it needs to be clearly stated in your, whatever you decide to put forward.
Okay, thank you.
But it is U.S. origin fuel, and we do have agreements. Wouldn't call them treaties,
They're
but agreements.
1, 2, 3 agreements through the State Department with these countries, yes.
Let's say that we take back any HEU that originated in the U.S. that was originally sent out. So that's why it's coming back here. So, and I don't agree with this whole thing, which I didn't before either, so.
I'm kind of with Dawn on that, but it seems like we did a public comment on this and did do the no action alternative. Am I not remembering right?
We had a public hearing or public meeting to discuss this, both when the concept was originally conceived and then also when the draft was put out for public comment.
Right.
That draft comments were incorporated and has been sent up to headquarters, and we're waiting on headquarters. So no decision's been made on the document itself.
Okay, no, correct my memory. At that point, when you sent that forward, wasn't it a no action alternative that was selected?
We sent forward the EA, and headquarters will make the recommendation of what decision it is.
Okay.
So that is not, so we're still waiting on that?
We are.
Official?
We're waiting on that, and with the administration change, we're not sure when it's going to reach their radar screen.
It's been sitting for months, correct?
Correct, since last June.
Mary?
Yeah, you did, Joe. I know we had a lot of debate on this, a lot of heated debate on this before, but refresh my recollection, and maybe you just answered that. Wasn't there a time period for response on the draft environmental assessment, and we put forth this to select the no action? Is that what you're saying, that there's been no decision?
There's been no decision yet.
And
the
there's
document's
no,
not been finalized.
So, and there is no date certain
No,
when
ma'am.
that is supposed to occur?
No, ma'am, there is not.
Okay.
Okay, when you say it's not been finalized, could you explain that a little bit more?
It's not been approved by our Department of Energy Environmental Management.
Okay, so what I'm saying is the timeline started running yet for the government response.
I don't understand what you
No,
mean
there's
by-
not, it's getting confused. I think what you're referring to is the public comment period, that we could get our public comments in that would then get incorporated into the draft that got sent up to headquarters. Headquarters has no timeline on anything.
Yeah, the public comment period ended like last April. So March or April is when the public comment period ended. Now, you were allowed to submit your own personal comments, and we did get those from members of the board and the committee.
Didn't we hear something at the meeting a couple of weeks ago that Germany's not going to pursue this?
I don't
No.
think so. You may have heard that from Tom Clements, but I don't
did,
have that
yes.
officially.
But that's
That's not official.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion on this? David, you?
Okay,
So
I
I
have,
guess we'll rehash this out of
Table it for the next meeting?
full
Yeah.
board meeting.
okay. I'll pass the next one out now. The other position statement that will expire in July has to do with opposition to consolidated interim storage of spent nuclear fuel and high-level waste at SRS. And if you'll indulge me, I'll go through this one too. It is shorter. the Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982 created a timetable for creation of a deep geologic repository for disposal of spent nuclear fuel and high-level radioactive waste, including waste at Savannah River site. The permanent repository is slated by the Nuclear Waste Policy Act to begin receiving commercial and defense waste by the middle of the next decade. That was 1995. After over 2 decades of site studies, DOE filed a construction license application with NRC in 2008. However, in 2009, the President determined the proposed location was, quote, not a workable option, unquote, and tasked a Blue Ribbon Commission to find alternatives. The Blue Ribbon Commission issued its final report in 2012 and included among its recommendations to 1. Develop one or more consolidated interim storage facilities, and 2. Provide for the siting and development of one or more deep geologic disposal facilities. In December of 2015, DOE formally initiated a siting process for storing and disposing of America's nuclear waste, and then President Obama tasked DOE with establishing a separate disposal site for defense waste. DOE is also planning to research the potential of deep borehole disposal. The current Trump administration has indicated the desire to restart the Yucca Mountain licensing process. Discussion. The 2013 response to the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendation states that over the next 10 years it plans to implement a program to make a disposal site available, quote, by 2048, unquote, over 50 years after the date intended by the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. DOE's poor track record in managing large capital projects indicates the likelihood that this estimate will only elongate. Even finishing the Yucca Mountain project would entail decades. In the meantime, DOE plans to establish consolidated interim storage sites for spent nuclear fuel and/or high-level radioactive waste. Because of existing SRS storage, DOE may consider SRS a suitable eastern consolidated interim storage alternative, despite its close proximity to water and population centers. Establishment of consolidated interim storage locations will likely have the unintended consequence of reducing motivation to create a permanent repository, thereby dramatically extending the period of interim storage at consolidation sites. Conclusions. A. Establishment of a permanent repository locations for spent nuclear fuel and high-level waste is at best decades away. Creation of consolidated interim storage sites will be extremely costly and would reduce the motivation to create a permanent repository. Pending establishment of repositories, DOE may consider the Savannah River site a suitable alternative for consolidated interim storage of spent nuclear fuel and/or high-level radioactive waste. Continued disposition of surplus nuclear material will continue to add to SRS's long-term waste storage liability. SRS has not been adequately evaluated under the National Environmental Policy Act for storage of spent nuclear fuel or high-level waste for the long time period likely to occur under DOE's current strategy. So, the recommendation is, based on the foregoing, the Savannah River Site Citizen Advisory Board recommends that DOE, 1, not consider SRS as a reasonable consolidated interim storage location for spent nuclear fuel and high-level radioactive waste, pending establishment of a permanent geologic repository. And 2, stabilize and remove such waste from SRS as soon as possible.
Larry, before you get started with your discussion, I just want to remind everyone that we're going to follow the path forward that the committee chair laid out at the beginning of comments from members first, and then we'll open it up to the general public. Okay.
Thank you, Jane.
Don Gillis Cab. First thing is this is not an EM project. That's why it was whatever it was. What do you call it? Yeah, position paper instead of a recommendation in the first place. So the response back will be, this isn't an EM program. We don't have anything to say about it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is how do I put this? I'm not for putting interim storage here. I'm not against it until I know what's talking about. By saying it now, it's closing the door now. Of course, it doesn't really matter. The door won't even exist by the time decisions start coming up again. So, like you said, this is decades away. Whatever we put on paper now is really irrelevant. So, I said my 2 cents.
Nina?
Nina Spinelli, Cab. David, I just had a quick question. For number 1 under recommendation, what is the difference between saying consider SRS as interim storage versus reasonable consolidated interim storage?
Good question. The National Environmental Policy Act requires that DOE or any federal agency look at all reasonable alternatives. And so the purpose of this recommendation is to encourage DOE to not consider Savannah River Site one of those reasonable alternatives for consolidated interim storage. Consolidated interim storage means taking the spent fuel from a number of different locations and consolidating it at one location. There's been examination of one or probably more consolidated interim storage locations, probably one in the east and probably one in the west, maybe not, but SRS would be a logical place for them to consider if they wanted an eastern consolidation. And to answer your comment about this isn't our fuel, it does include the fuel that's stored at SRS, as well as the high-level waste.
What this is mainly talking about is commercial fuel. It's not,
But not only.
And there really isn't very much of what we store here. I mean, we already bring it in. We bring it in from Missouri. We bring it in from MIT. We already bring it here. And it's not a consolidation. It's a place to process it. But this, what you're talking about here, is the big ticket item. It's all the stuff that's coming from all the power plants. So that's an entirely different thing than the little bits and drabs we get from research reactors.
I don't think it's dribs and drabs, but okay, I understand your point.
Relative to commercial fuel, it's dribs and drabs. I wish I had the numbers. I mean, there's huge numbers for commercial fuel.
Okay,
Do you have a comment? Gil. I don't count.
Gil? Didn't see you, too close.
You didn't see me. That doesn't happen very often. David, I applaud you for not just this, but what we discussed earlier, turning the position papers into recommendations. I applaud you for that. I think that's great. We jumped to, I feel like, because this is from us, you wrote it, but this is from the cab, and in your discussion, I think we have some huge jumps to some conclusions all the way through it. And whether or not, I guess Nina kind of stole a little bit of what I was saying. Reasonable is a funny word. Because what's reasonable to me isn't reasonable to you, and what's reasonable to you isn't reasonable to me. We're pretty, there's some ambiguity in these recommendations, and I understand why. But in the waste management meeting that preceded this, we were talking about WIP, and the stuff's been here for 40 years. That's interim storage. We're already doing it.
But we're not for commercial fuel. That's mainly what this is adding to it, is commercial fuel.
But David wrote this in a way he doesn't bring up commercial fuel. I mean, it's not being discussed directly about commercial, unless I'm losing something in the NWPA or something like that, or the Blue Ribbon Commission. I mean, there's not. I mean,
let's also keep in mind that this is very draft at this point. We haven't had a chance to properly do the technical vetting. We haven't run through that, all that stuff. You guys are really seeing this for the first time, even though it's based on a prior position statement. So while I get the impetus to maybe want to wordsmith this some now, let's hold off until June. Let's get our proper reviews done and get a chance for you guys to really digest it and look at it.
Cool.
Didn't the original position paper talk about it being for commercial, interim storage of commercial fuel?
Yeah, that was taken out.
Yeah.
That was taken out?
And I remember in Yucca Mountain was taken out because
Couldn't say Yucca
Yucca
Mountain.
Mountain wasn't allowed to be in it. I remember that, and it was clear in his background that Yucca Mountain should be in there, but I remember them saying you couldn't include it.
Mr.
Tom?
Yeah, Tom French, the cab. I think as we do the proper vetting, one of the things that's missing is quantification. So if we're talking about German fuel, how many metric tons is that, and what does that equivalent disposal volume become? And on the reactor fuel, since I spent a good deal of time in the commercial nuclear industry, it is the huge volume, but we ought to look at tonnage of defense spent products, glass, whatever, and then the commercial fuel, which is unprocessed and is vulnerable to attack. So I think we would need to put that quantification in there. We can really understand what we're talking about.
That's a good point.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion? Okay, if we have no other discussion, I guess it's time, can we go ahead for public comments at this time? We have public comments.
Joe Hurtado, Public again. Couple of questions on the fuel that's at the site stored now. What are the plans for the non-aluminum clad fuel?
Good question.
Maxcine Maxted, DOE. Currently, the non-aluminum clad fuel, our plan is to put in place a dry storage project, which is very expensive. Now, there are studies, the Spent Nuclear Fuel Working Group is actually evaluating whether we can do a swap. There was a swap between Idaho, which already has a dry storage capability, and then which they don't have a H Canyon, so we would take their aluminum clad, and then we would send them our stainless and Zirc, the non-aluminum. That's been presented. It's not been acted on. So right now, the way that our life cycle baseline looks is we have to assume that we have to handle it ourselves. So we have a dry storage project in our life cycle baseline to handle that material.
Dry storage is not a disposition. It is just another form of storage. It is an interim storage. It is not disposition.
Okay, well, that's what answers the question. That's the plan, just so you know what the plan is. That's all I know. And are we still getting non-aluminum clad fuel being shipped?
No, sir, we do not. There's an EIS on the records, and so basically all of the aluminum clad fuel from research and domestic comes to Savannah River. All of the non-aluminum clad fuel goes to Idaho. Of course, Idaho is not receiving anything because of their BATN agreement right now. They have some commitments, regulatory commitments they have to meet before they'll be allowed to receive any more material.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the CAB has recommended before that that swap be made, I believe.
Well, at one time, Idaho was going to process it, but they decided they're not going to process it now. Yeah, that's what I thought.
But Idaho was also working on the capability to package that to ship it to WIP, which is a entirely different set of packaging than what it would be for aluminum. So they were storing it with that in mind.
They're
Direct
packaging it for a
disposal.
repository, not necessarily WIP.
Not WIP. I meant Yucca,
Okay.
but yeah, repository. Yeah. So it would be direct ship without processing.
Okay.
Relative to the two proposed recommendations, with the interim storage type things, I think valid points have been raised in the position paper. But what I'd suggest, and I said this before when you put the position paper up, is that the CAB not so much take a hard position now, but come in and say, well, these are our concerns. Because I guarantee if headquarters is evaluating 6 sites, they're going to evaluate 6 sites. And you're going to want to hear the results of their evaluation and what they're doing. And if they come up and say, well, SRS is it, and I don't think they will be because they'll go out west someplace. But you want to be kept informed as to what the heck's going on. But I would just kind of soften it to say no, never, as much as we can't say anything now, but these are our concerns, and we're not going to say anything until we have these concerns addressed. And the same thing would apply for the German fuel, is you got a lot of valid concerns on there, but rather than saying, no, we don't want it, because these aren't answered, just say, well, we're not going to take a hard position until all these are answered to our satisfaction. Take it for what it's worth and evaluate it.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Jenny?
Jenny Jones, I'm just trying to remember in the current standard operating procedures, do we still have the letter of interest or the letter, there was the position statement, and there was another option also in the old rules.
The old rules were a little more flexible in terms of what letters could be written.
Right.
It's been narrowed down to the integrated priority list letter and recommendations. Those are the two forms of feedback and products that the CAB delivers to DOE.
Okay, so there's no more letter option.
No.
Okay.
That doesn't preclude letters from individual public going to whoever you want to send it to in the government.
Okay, more public comment.
Hi, I'm Jim Mara, and I just wanted to alert the CAB to a report that might be helpful to you. That it's titled "Evaluation of Options for Permanent Geologic Disposal of Spent Nuclear Fuel and High-Level Radioactive Waste." It's in 2 volumes. It was published in April of 2014. And I will say the biggest value of what's contained in this report is it probably provides one of the best inventories of what's considered commercial spent nuclear fuel, EM and high-level waste, or DOE-owned spent nuclear fuel, as well as projected high-level waste of what's going to be out there. So it's really a quite good report. Whether you want to read the stuff on repository stuff, there is the first sections of that report that does provide a very good overview of what is considered to be out there and what volumes.
Is that on our website? Can we?
I don't know that you need to put it on your website, but if we can find it and get it available, we can send the link out to you.
Send the
It's
link, at least
it's
the
a
link,
DOE report. It's a Office of Nuclear Energy. I can give you the number if I can read it. FCRD-UFD-2013-000371, Revision 1.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? And I guess that's all we have. If there's nothing else, I make a motion we adjourn.